Getting your film scans done at home or choosing to get them scanned at a lab is a crucial decision when it comes to pursuing film photography. When it comes to film, Kodak Ektachrome is rarely a stock I reach for, although it does have some traits I like. It can be described as a daylight balanced color transparency film with extremely fine grain structure, vibrant color rendering, and overall low contrast profile. But even with knowing the characteristics of film stocks, I know so much can be changed during the scanning process. A flatbed scanner such as the Epson V600 could be a cheaper alternative when it comes to monetary costs, but a high cost when it comes to spending time. Maybe you want to make sure you're getting the best quality scans money can buy and are willing to invest a bit of cash. Then perhaps visiting a lab can yield the results you're looking for. I found for myself that both methods work, so we'll take a peek into scanning film with the Epson V600 and how that compares to scans from a lab that I frequent. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hope you all are doing great today. We're going to be taking a look at some Epson V600 scans for Ektachrome 100. I think we're going to take a look at these slides today, and we're really going to be able to see that color pop even just on the positives. I actually have them sitting right here. I don't know if you can see them like all the way, but the way that they are illuminated with the iPad, this is one beautiful thing about slide film, is that you can see the slides here as opposed to color negative. So we'll be diving into why I would use a lab, why I would scan at home, take a look at the slides on a light table, and compare side by side the scans that I got from Panda Lab and the scans that I got just using the Epson V600, and then do some little bit of correcting and come up with some conclusions. So why would I use a lab? I think over the last 3 years, my reasoning has maybe changed or altered. It just kind of has developed with the experiences that I've had personally just shooting film, whether that be 120 aka medium format or 35mm. I think just jumping in, I wasn't aware of any other tools that I could use to basically get my negatives to a digital format. So when I first started shooting 35mm film, it was just the way that was recommended to me. I didn't even know too much about film, honestly, when I first got started. And this was like back in 2018. I didn't know that you could scan these negatives at home. I didn't know much about film, but as I've become more experienced and just have learned things along the journey, I'm able to kind of weigh the pros and the cons and just all the different aspects of the benefits of using a lab and any cons as well. You know, one thing that a lot of people mention, or that I've experienced too even, is being able to scan at home will give you full control over your negatives. They're going to give you full control over your exposures. They're going to give you full control over how your images end up being processed. It's going to be fully hands-on for you. But if it's a fully hands-on process, I think it's one that can be time consuming. And for any of you out there watching that own an Epson V600 and you've just stumbled upon this, or you've heard anything about Epson V600, you know that it can take a long time to get your scans done. So using a lab can help save some time, and it's definitely been a benefit for me using one over the years. But I 100% believe that there's a level of quality that you can get at a lab that is very hard to get at home unless you have some type of different scanner other than a flatbed, and it just can save you a lot of time. And I've been very impressed or very satisfied with the consistency that I've been able to get to the lab, and just knowing how my film is going to look depending on certain film stocks, of course. So why would I scan at home? Well, maybe I want to save money. Maybe I want to have that full control over my exposures. I want to be able to have that hands-on process from start to finish. Well, not necessarily start to finish, because I don't develop at home, but part of the start to finish process when it comes to digitizing the color negatives or color positives or the black and white, whatever film that you're shooting. If you're scanning at home, you're really going to be able to be hands-on. And I do think there's something about that process that is a bit methodical. It is a bit of a experience, I would say. It's like very meditative. I do know that a lot of people enjoy that, and as I've scanned at home, I do love that process. I actually don't mind how long it takes with the flatbed, even though you can do DSLR or mirrorless scanning. I just like the process of the flatbed because it's already set up. I don't have to go and set anything up or use an additional camera or macro lens to basically digitize, but I do know that it's a great route. But at the end of the day, whether it's at the lab or at home, whatever type of scanner you're using, there's no right or wrong way. It's what's right for you and what makes sense for your budget. Using a lab can be costly, but I don't want that to scare you, especially if you're just getting into film. It takes a certain expertise, I think, to really get your negatives right or really get your scans right at home. It takes a certain expertise when it comes to color grading or just the processing and understanding the software of the scanner or of using whatever program you're using for your post-processing, whether that's Lightroom or Photoshop, Capture One, etc. There's a certain expertise I think that takes. And the thing for me, using the lab or scanning at home, my scans are essentially just that layer of foundation that I need to essentially build off on to create my stylized look from my film that's getting digitized. You know, while I was doing these at home and taking a look, having a light table at home, aka my iPad, has been very beneficial, especially when it comes to color positive film, slide film such as Ektachrome 100. Being able to really see the colors, how they look on the positives, is an experience within itself. During my whole time of post-processing my scans that I got from the lab, I'm constantly looking over to the light table, checking the colors to see like how it looks, getting a color base basically back to what it was and adding a little bit of stylized look to what I got. There's something about slide film, and if I had a projector, then maybe I'd be projecting it on the walls and doing some editing and whatnot, but I don't have that ability or that capability right now, and it's totally fine. So if you have an iPad at home or you're using something for a light table, you can even use your phone screen too as well. Pull up a white background and just put certain exposures over your phone, and you'll be able to see what's going on with your slides if you're wanting to do some referencing there. So we provide solutions over here 100%. So now that I've talked a little bit about the lab scans, the home scanning, and the light table, let's jump onto the computer, scan in this Ektachrome 100, and let's compare some lab scans too as well. I'm going to be doing a little bit adjusting, but I'll take you along through the whole process so you can see step by step a little bit of what's going on. Okay, so I have Epson Scan open and I have the mode set to photo mode. We got to set it to transparency unit because this is film that we're scanning. We're not going to be scanning with the color glass. And then as far as document type, we need to go from color negative film to color positive film. Now, the reason why we need to do this is because Ektachrome is a slide film. It's a color positive film. It's not a color negative film. It's not amber like, say, a Portra 400, for example, like the other film stock that we shot on the day. So we need to get that set so we can have a good preview of what we'll be looking at before we scan everything in. And we'll do 48-bit on color for the image type, just so we make sure we're getting as much detail as we can. And resolution, I'm going to use 2400 DPI. I probably want to go above 4800. Sometimes I'll do 3200, but honestly 2400 is fine just for this flatbed scanner. And then scanning quality on high, of course. And then thumbnail options, I'm going to set this to 6:4:5 because that's the aspect ratio we're shooting on. If I'm shooting on 6:7, sometimes I'll scan to a bigger size just to make sure I'm getting a little bit more under the borders to make sure I'm getting the full image. So let's do a preview. Let's see what happens. Let's see what comes out. I'm going to select two images here, this first one and this last one. Ooh. We'll X those two out. And you know, honestly, just from looking at this preview, these scans look really good. Sometimes I'll come in and use color restoration, but honestly, these scans already look really, really good. Let's scan them in and let's see what happens. This is gonna take a little moment.
Scanning 1 of 2. Let's see how long it says.
So I've got the Epson scans loaded up. I've got the lab scans loaded up. And honestly, just straight scans, I'm actually feeling the Epson scans a lot more. I feel like they look more natural in terms of like how I like my finished photos to look like. I feel like the lab scans have a strong tint of yellow. Now the biggest thing is on this day, because the location has a lot of different colors going on, there's a lot of light bouncing everywhere, we're gonna get some tints in the skin. And when shooting portraits, skin tone is very, very important. Let's hop into the develop module here and take a closer look. So this is the lab scan. This is the Epson scan. Color wise, I like the Epson scan a lot more. Sharpness wise, the lab scan is doing it for me 100%. Let's look at them side by side. So we have our lab scan on the left, our Epson scan on the right. There's definitely a clear sharpness difference, 100%, but I think the Epson scan has a file that's doable. It doesn't have a lot of dust either, so that's good. That's good. But tint wise and skin tones wise, there's a lot of correction that I had to do with getting that in a realm essentially that I wanted. So let's hop over to the next set of images. I'll put the lab scan on the left and the home scan on the right with the Epson. Yeah, skin tones wise on the Epson, everything looks really, really good. And with the Epson scan, I didn't do any additional adjustments. I just made those settings changes that I showed you guys as far as making sure I'm scanning in the color positive, but additional adjustments, I didn't do anything. Now, it's just gonna be the sharpness that I think really, really falls flat. So let's take a look at some scans that I corrected from the lab versus the Epson scans without any correction, and let's kind of see what that looks like. Okay, so for reference, let's do this. The lab scan is on the left and the right scan is the lab scan after I did my correction to it. And then now on the left is the Epson scan versus my correction on the right, my look, my edit essentially of the film. And I feel like it's pretty good. I think it's just really the shadows are more opened up. It's a little bit more popping wise with the exposure, and it's a little more punchy, which I do love and like. But that is very interesting take there. Okay, so let's look at the other image here. Okay, so original lab scan on the left, my edit of the scan on the right. Same thing, punchy, try to just keep that same consistency there. And then let's take a look at the home scan on the left with the Epson, and then just my adjustment on the right. So what I'm just getting is it just looks very, very natural with the Epson scan. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually edit the Epson scan, do like a quick edit of the scan. And like I said, the biggest thing is the sharpness difference when scanning on the flatbed. And I feel like it's gonna be very, very hard to even try to bring it up on a similar level of sharpness just at home. So I'll just kind of get in there and play around with the sharpness a little bit. Like I said, it's not gonna compare with how the lab scan is, but it'll give us something to work with. So just dial up the curve here a bit. I'm just gonna bring the contrast down some. You raise the exposure a bit, get it more punchy. Bring it up. Do you want to bring those shadows down? Always start with this curve. All right, I'm just gonna bring the shadows down, the darks down, bring my lights up just so it's more punchy. Now it's pretty interesting editing this because I've already basically processed the other one. Bring my vibrance up, saturation. Let me drop the contrast down a little bit. I'm gonna bring the saturation down just a tad, maybe like 4 on that, and then the vibrancy at like maybe 8. Bring the black point down, raise the whites a little bit. And that looks like something like an edit that I would probably do. And just the contrast a bit. Yeah, that looks similar to what an edit I would probably do. Just something quick. All right, I'm gonna compare that just to what mine is. I do think they have 2 different looks. You know, I'm fine with either of these. It all depends on, you know, what lab you're using, how they're scanning it. It's gonna be a big difference every time. I'm gonna go in and adjust this because it's so interesting. It's way more punchy. I think because the highlights or the exposure is a bit higher there. So I'm actually gonna bump that. Let me see if I can. Okay. That's so interesting. I like both, but it's so interesting to see the scan at home. So I honestly think this is good for me. I'm over here still messing around with this, but this is good. It's a very simple correction, but I do like this, doing a scan at home or even my own corrections of the lab. I'll use that kind of base scan to bring everything back there, and that's like pretty solid. And then I didn't even have to adjust, I didn't even think about adjusting white balance. Sometimes I'll just take this and do an auto to see what it'll give me. Or you can do your dropper right onto the shoe. That's your white point there. So honestly, that's like a good, that looks good to me. I feel like this already looks how it looks on the light table. I'm actually very, very surprised. So it just goes to show that your mileage will vary. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. It was a pleasure to talk through a little bit of this process with you, show a little bit of the behind the scenes of the actual photos that was made on that day. Thank you guys so much again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Holla.